Hi, I'm Gus Tamburello. Many people think that if they die without a will, the state gets their property. This is not true. However, the state does determine who gets your property. And that determination depends on whether or not you are single or married, and if you are married, whether the property was community property or separate property. In this video, we are going to discuss what happens to the property of a married person when they die. Let's take a look at the chart. If the married person dies with children and had separate property, then that property is going to pass to the deceased person's children equally, subject to what is known as a life estate in 1/3 of the surviving spouse. Now, separate property is that property which the decedent acquired prior to the marriage or during the marriage by gift or inheritance. This life estate in 1/3 is not essentially an ownership interest, because when the surviving spouse dies, all the property is then owned by the decedent's children. However, the law is different with respect to other separate property, such as personal property, a vehicle, personal effects, things of that nature. In that event, the surviving children take 2/3 of that property, and the surviving spouse takes 1/3 of that property. This is a different interest than with real estate in that the surviving spouse retains an outright ownership interest in 1/3 of the personal property. Now, as is more common in the event of the death of a married person, there is community property, and that is all the property acquired during the marriage except for the separate property. All of the community real estate will go to the surviving spouse if all of the surviving children and descendants of the deceased person are also the children or descendants of the surviving spouse. If that is true, all other community property will also pass to the surviving spouse. However, as has become more common in our society, there are children from outside of the existing marriage. If that's the case, the community real estate passes 1/2 to the children and 1/2 to the surviving spouse. That is, the surviving spouse keeps his or her 1/2, and the decedent's 1/2 goes to all of his or her children equally. The same thing would happen with the other property, such as the personal effects, vehicles, and things of that nature. The children will take 1/2 of that property, and the surviving spouse will retain his or her 1/2 of that property. And so, as you can see from that discussion, if you want to avoid the consequence of having your property owned by multiple persons after your death, such as by your children and your second spouse, then you should do a will.